So some of the stuff that we feel is important around B4U, PAI has developed a base of reporting tools, daily downloads to track B4U transactions and reveal, what TID has actually performed B4U transactions. And this is just something that we feel is important. I feel like every processor will probably do the same type of development work as they get into this, but this is some of the stuff that we've been working on and wanted to kind of share a little bit. So these are our daily download reports. You can see, obviously the switch is listed here, the settlement, the terminal, the transaction date and time. We do calculate B4U in a fee amount and not as a surcharge. It is a fee, and so we never want to commingle a fee with surcharge. So we broke it out a little bit differently, and it doesn't mean we're right or wrong. It just means this is what we chose to do. We do show the transaction type as being a withdrawal. We show the network code, just like you would see Visa or Star or Excel. This is a B4U transaction. And we also pull in the sequence number of the transaction for ease of reference if there's any issues. So just want to share with you a little bit of what we've been working on as it surrounds B4U. Next slide, Amber. We do have real-time reporting. So when you check the balance of your ATM throughout the day, kind of getting ready for your cash forecasting the next day, you can see when B4U transactions happen, and you will see the balance in your ATM obviously will go down based on the withdrawal that would happen. And we think this is pretty normal, mainstream kind of stuff that processors will do. We just felt like we should show a little bit of it here and give you an idea of what's going on. Next screen. So one of the questions was what is the future of the ATMs and what does it look like for ATM owners after COVID-19? And it's hard to say what that really looks like. We tried to jot down some things that have brought to light and some things that we can talk about, because the reality is we're not through COVID-19. We're probably somewhere in the 50 to 60%. We've probably gotten through the toughest part, but it's clearly not over. Our economy is not back to where it needs to be. There are still reports of COVID coming in. So I don't know that we can answer this question fully, but we have some ideas and some thoughts here that we put down. And one of the things that we really think is that COVID has brought a sense of urgency for consumers to get money in cash and keep that cash and keep that money flowing next to pandemic times. And so what we believe is that the cardless world, as well as the Bitcoin options, have created a new development push, because these are areas where we feel like we can move cash quicker, we need to move cash quicker, and there's more options. And a lot of those are going to be around the ATM. I think a lot of those are going to happen outside of the ATM as mobile adoption becomes a little more apparent with banks and digital banking. We're unclear with dynamic currency conversion. Right now it's struggling. Obviously the travel bans coming into the US have kind of crippled DCC from an aspect of we don't have those international travelers. So we're not clear where DCC is going to go. I think once the travel bans are lifted, we're going to see people coming back to the US. We might see a slower adoption of people coming back to the US for fear of getting sick. But from a currency conversion standpoint, the future is a little unclear here. And so some of the things that we think ATM operators need to focus on is additional remote capabilities, obviously limiting your travel time and exposure to COVID. And so we feel like those are some of the things that are going to be looked at in the future as we go forward. Next slide, Amber. The question came up of, what have we learned from the past? In the past, added services have sometimes met with limited success or acceptance. And what did we learn from those past efforts? We continue to look for complementary products for the ATM, and this is a tough challenge because it's hard to find products that we can just throw on an ATM. Going back to our initial conversation of development time, a real product that has consumer adoption. And so what I do think after COVID is that we've learned to embrace where people are going with their cell phones. And we think that we need to focus on cardless transactions. We need to focus on Bitcoin. We need to focus on mobile wallets, because we feel like that's going to be the future of where we're going. And I think COVID has accelerated that pace for us, where if things were normal and staying the same, we probably would not have moved to this space in a 3 to 4 year period. I feel like COVID has accelerated that, and we're probably going to be in that space more relevant and prevalent every day in probably a year to a year and a half. And we think the three things that really are going to focus on is mobile banking, online shopping, and Venmo, PayPal. These are things that people are doing today, and in the last year have really gone crazy. I mean, Venmo is everywhere. Look at Amazon and what people are doing. So we think that the key to all of this is really the cell phone technology, tying the cell phone in with the ATM, and we feel like that's the direction that we really need to go in. Next slide, Amber. So looking forward, and how do we apply the past lessons of what is being presented today in the future, and what do we think the ATMs in the new world, which is what we're saying is about 5 years, will look like? We feel like the ATM is going to take on a kiosk, not necessarily a kiosk look, but a kiosk functionality, where you're going to have several options at that ATM. And the technology around our ATMs today is getting better and better and better. We think the areas of focus are QR codes taking the place of a physical card, and obviously EMV security. So QR codes seem to be very prominent, and that seems to be a direction that everybody wants to head in. Everything mobile. We feel like everything from a banking aspect and somewhat transactions is going to be moved to the mobile phone. And crypto-based, if you look at crypto in the last year, you've seen tremendous growth in the crypto world. And whether the US will adopt a cryptocurrency or not is unclear, but there's been several talks at a very high government level about the US bringing in a stable coin or a crypto coin to be used. And again, that was all accelerated due to COVID-19 actually taking place and happening. And we feel like the technology will continue to grow at the ATM and offer more functionality like a kiosk with several services available. Next slide, Amber. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Jack Williams, who's been a friend. I've learned a lot from Jack in the last couple of months. He's great to talk to, and at that point, Jack, it's all you.
All right, Mike, thank you so very much. Actually, you did it for me, so I guess what I'll try to do now, and so much of the great information you provided, thank you. So welcome, everyone, and good morning, and thank you so much for taking the time from your schedule to join us tonight, this morning, today. So let's kind of look at what we're going to do. Amber, first slide, please. I want to talk about, kind of give you some context. I hear often an awful lot. What is a blockchain? What is a wallet? What is a Bitcoin? I hear a lot. I want a Bitcoin. All right. Well, you can't really get a Bitcoin. Is kind of the response. So what I would like to do is complement what Mike talked about, and maybe kind of fill out the protocols, so you kind of have an idea of where all this fits and what we see coming down the road. Amber? So let's take a quick trip through memory lane here. So first of all, I've been a miner of Bitcoin since July of 2010. I don't do it anymore because it just got so big. But when I first got into mining Bitcoins, they were 8 cents each. And at that time, it got up to a whole 31 cents, 6 months. And I thought these were, it was a nuisance. It did use up all of the CPU capacity on my desktop. But other than that, I didn't really see a value in Bitcoin. Well, how wrong I was. So 10 years ago, Bitcoin was 8 cents, but also 10 years ago, if I told you that the largest hotel chain in the world would not hold and own a single hotel, the largest taxi company would not own a single taxi, one of the top retailers in the world is named after a children's fairy tale, and that a little Seattle bookseller that was working with eBay that was selling books new and used would become the world's largest retailer. What if I told you that pandemic would change the very core of how consumers transact their banking services? It's not at a bank. The banks will not be the forefront of banking services. It's going to be tied to, in my opinion, mobile smartphones. I look at banks like Cap One that have turned into, to some degree, a coffee shop and try to change the positioning. But the reality is there is no real need for a legacy bank. And so I would want to stick my neck out. Legacy banks in 10 years may be a thing of the past, and that's yet to be told. Amber? So what is a Bitcoin? Bitcoin is not a coin, all right? People say that all the time, but it is a digital representation of value. It's a currency that has numbers to it, numbers and letters, and it's stored in a digital wallet, which is generally on your smartphone, but can be on your laptop or certainly a tablet. But it's a digital representation of value, just like the money that's in your bank today and your debit card is a digital representation. Cash is not sitting there stacked up to the ceilings. What it is, it's a digital representation. And that's what Bitcoins are. And the interesting thing about a Bitcoin, it can be broken into what's called 1,000,000 bits, or it can be broken into 100 million, what's called Satoshis. And so it's very pliable. It can be broken apart. It can be recombined. It offers one, flexibility, but two, great speed. Every transaction is recorded in what they call a public ledger. Think of it as just a book where somebody somewhere, this is probably a little bit, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but it's being logged into the ledger. These transactions can be traced and can be watched, called a hash. And one of the things we provide is that hash. So you can watch what goes through the blockchain. So do not think of blockchain and Bitcoin as the same. Bitcoin is a very, very small part of what blockchain can do. And we'll talk about it in a second. But it's nice to be able to trace a transaction. We can stop people from spending. They're fast. You can't make copies of these. You can't undo a transaction. Some people somewhere have been able to reverse them, but it's so rare that I can say that these transactions are very secure. They're very fast. And once the money has been transmitted, what they call fiat, and why they call cash fiat, named after a French car manufacturer, I don't know. I think it's something else. But anyway, the point being that you can trace these transactions, you can follow up, and it becomes a very usable, traceable financial platform. Amber?